We know you guys love these stories, but most of you listening aren't subscribing. Our subs have been quite low this month, and we're really close to 20,000 subscribers, so please be a legend and smash the subscribe button. And like this video, it will really help support us. Thank you so much.
I decided to download Bumble. I've been single for a while and figured why not give online dating a try. Everyone else seemed to be doing it. At first, swiping through profiles was kind of fun. I matched with a few people, but the conversations never went anywhere. Most fizzled out after a few messages or the other person just stopped responding. After a couple of weeks, I was about ready to delete the app. That's when I matched with Rebecca. Her profile immediately caught my eye. She had long dark hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that lit up the screen. Her bio said she loved hiking, trying new restaurants, and was looking for someone genuine to connect with. It felt like I was reading my own profile. I couldn't believe it when we matched and she messaged me first. She asked about a hiking photo I had on my profile, and we started chatting about our favorite trails. The conversation flowed so easily. For the first time since downloading the app, I felt a real connection with someone. We texted constantly over the next few days. Rebecca was funny, smart, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about everything, our jobs, our families, our hopes and dreams. I found myself checking my phone all the time, eager to see her latest message. After about a week of talking, Rebecca suggested we meet up in person. I was thrilled but also nervous. What if the chemistry wasn't there in real life? She lived in the next city over, about an hour away, so we made plans for her to come visit me that weekend. The day before our planned date, I woke up to a long text from Rebecca. She explained that her car had broken down and she wasn't sure she'd be able to make it. My heart sank. I offered to drive to her instead, but she said her landlord was hassling her for late rent, and she was stressed about coming up with the money. I felt terrible for her. Here was this amazing woman I had been connecting with, and she was dealing with all these problems. Without really thinking it through, I offered to help her out financially. I told her I could send her some money to cover her rent so she wouldn't have to worry about it. Rebecca was hesitant at first, saying she couldn't accept money from me. But I insisted, telling her I wanted to help and that she could pay me back whenever. Finally, she agreed and gave me her Venmo information. I sent her $1,000, feeling good about being able to help her out of a tough spot. She was so grateful, saying how much it meant to her and how excited she was to see me that weekend. We made final plans for her to drive down Saturday afternoon. I spent all day Saturday cleaning my apartment and getting ready, wanting everything to be perfect. As the afternoon wore on, I kept checking my phone for updates from Rebecca. But there were no new messages. I figured she was probably driving and couldn't text. But when the time she was supposed to arrive came and went with no sign of her, I started to worry. I sent her a message asking if everything was okay. No response. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. Hours passed, and still nothing. The sinking feeling in my stomach grew stronger. By that evening, it was clear Rebecca wasn't coming. I kept checking my phone obsessively, hoping to hear from her. Maybe she had car trouble again. Maybe there was some emergency, but deep down, I think I knew the truth. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, replaying every conversation with Rebecca in my head. Had I missed some red flag? Was there something I should have noticed? The next morning, I woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream. But when I checked my phone, there were still no messages from Rebecca. Her Bumble profile had disappeared. A quick Google search of her name and the photos from her profile turned out nothing. The realization of what had happened slowly sank in. I'd been scammed. Rebecca wasn't real, or at least, the person I'd been talking to wasn't the woman in those photos. I'd fallen for a fake profile and been tricked out of $1,000. I felt sick to my stomach. How could I have been so stupid? I knew about romance scams, but I never thought it would happen to me. I was embarrassed and ashamed, not wanting to tell anyone what had happened. Over the next few days, I went through a range of emotions. Anger at the scammer for taking advantage of me. Frustration with myself for falling for it. Sadness at losing the connection I thought I'd found. And fear, what if the scammer had more of my personal information? I reported the scam to Bumble and my bank, but there wasn't much they could do. The money was gone. I changed all my passwords and monitored my accounts closely, paranoid about further theft. For weeks, I kept hoping there was some explanation. Maybe Rebecca would reach out and it would all be a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't happen. I deleted all the dating apps off my phone and swore off online dating. I had a hard time trusting people who were opening up. Every time my phone buzzed with a text, my heart would race, hoping it was Rebecca, but also dreading it might be the scammer again. I threw myself into work and tried to keep busy, but the embarrassment and shame lingered. I felt like I had a secret I couldn't tell anyone. My friends noticed I was withdrawn and kept asking what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. After a few months, I finally opened up to my best friend about what had happened. To my surprise, he was incredibly supportive. He didn't judge me or make me feel stupid. Instead, he listened and offered comfort. It was a huge relief to finally talk about it with someone. As time passed, the pain of the experience faded. I still felt embarrassed when I thought about it, but it no longer consumed me. I started to see it as a learning experience, albeit an expensive one. Eventually, I did give online dating another try, this time with a lot more skepticism and caution. I was careful about what information I shared and always insisted on video chatting before meeting in person. I never sent money to matches, no matter what their story was. I had some good experiences and some not so good ones, but I didn't let that scam define me or keep me from putting myself out there. I realized that closing myself off completely wasn't the answer. I just needed to be more careful and trust my instincts. So that's my story, how I lost $1,000 and gained a whole lot of wisdom. It's not the happiest tale, but it's mine. And if sharing it helps even one person avoid falling for a similar scam, then maybe some good can come from it after all. I never saw it coming. One minute I was excited about meeting Jenna, the girl of my dreams, and the next I was sitting across from a complete stranger. But let me start from the beginning. It was a typical Friday night, and I was scrolling through my dating apps, swiping left more often than right. That's when I saw her profile. Jenna was stunning, long blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. Her bio was witty and intriguing, mentioning a love for true crime podcasts and obscure indie bands. I swiped right without hesitation. To my surprise, we matched instantly. Within minutes, we were messaging back and forth. The conversation flowed effortlessly. We bonded over our shared interests, cracking jokes about unsolved mysteries and debating the merits of various podcast hosts. Hours flew by, and before I knew it, it was 3 a.m. Over the next 2 weeks, Jenna and I talked constantly. We moved from the app to texting, exchanging messages throughout the day. She always seemed to know just what to say to make me laugh or to brighten my mood after a tough day at work. I found myself thinking about her constantly, wondering what she was doing and eagerly awaiting her next message. We had so much in common. Jenna loved hiking, just like me. She shared my passion for photography and even had some of her work featured in local galleries. We both had dreams of traveling the world, and we'd spend hours planning imaginary trips together. It felt like I found my perfect match. As our connection grew stronger, I suggested we meet up in person. Jenna seemed hesitant at first, always coming up with reasons why she couldn't. She was busy with work, or her car was in the shop, or she wasn't feeling well. I tried not to read too much into it, figuring she was just nervous. Finally, after about 2 weeks of constant communication, Jenna agreed to meet. We decided on a casual drinks at a local bar. I was thrilled and spent the next few days in a state of nervous excitement. I must have changed my outfit a dozen times before heading out that night. I arrived at the bar early, wanting to make sure I got a good spot. As I sat there, nursing a beer and watching the door, my palms were sweaty and my heart was racing. Every time the door opened, I'd look up expectantly, only to be disappointed when it wasn't her. After about 20 minutes of waiting, I started to worry. Had she changed her mind? Was she standing me up? Just as I was considering texting her, the door opened again. A woman walked in and my heart sank. She was looking around the bar nervously, clearly searching for someone. And then her eyes landed on me. This woman looked nothing like the Jenna I've been talking to. She was shorter, heavier, with short dark hair instead of the long blonde locks I've been expecting. For a moment, I hoped she was looking for someone else, but then she started walking towards me, a hesitant smile on her face. As she got closer, I could see a faint resemblance to the photos I'd seen. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile. It was like looking at a distant relative of the woman I thought I knew. My mind was reeling as I tried to process what was happening. "Hi, I'm Jenna," she said softly as she sat down across from me. I mumbled a greeting, still in shock. The easy conversation we'd had online was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was this heavy, awkward silence between us. I didn't know what to say or how to react. Part of me wanted to confront her about the deception, while another part just wanted to bolt out of there. As we sat there, making stilted small talk, I couldn't help but feel a whirlwind of emotions. I was angry that she lied to me, using someone else's photos to draw me in. But I also felt a twinge of pity. The real Jenna seemed so uncomfortable and ashamed. I could see the fear of rejection in her eyes. I tried to reconcile the person sitting in front of me with the Jenna I thought I knew. The quick wit and confidence that had attracted me online were nowhere to be seen. Instead, she seemed shy and unsure of herself, stumbling over her words and avoiding eye contact. As the night wore on, we managed to find our way back to some of the topics we discussed online. But it wasn't the same. The easy banter was gone, replaced by forced conversation and long, uncomfortable pauses. I kept looking at her, trying to see the person I connected with, but all I saw was a stranger. Jenna eventually opened up about why she'd used fake photos. She talked about her insecurities and how she never thought anyone would want to meet the real her. She claimed that everything else about her profile and our conversations had been genuine. It was just the photos that were fake. I listened, trying to keep an open mind. But the trust was already broken. Even if everything else had been real, she'd still started our entire relationship with a major lie. How could I believe anything she said now? As we talked, I couldn't help but notice the other patrons in the bar. A group of friends laughing at a nearby table, a couple on what was clearly a successful first date. I felt a pang of envy, wishing I could be having the night I'd imagined instead of this uncomfortable reality. By the end of the night, I was emotionally drained. The excitement and anticipation I felt earlier had been replaced by disappointment and confusion. Jenna asked if we could see each other again, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. The foundation of trust was shattered, and I couldn't see a way to rebuild it. As I left the bar, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that the night was over, anger at being deceived, and a lingering sadness for the connection I thought I'd found. I walked home in a daze, replaying the events of the night in my head. The next few days were tough. I couldn't stop thinking about Jenna, both the idealized version I created in my head and the real person I'd met. I felt foolish for falling for a catfish, but also conflicted about my reaction. Should I have been more understanding, less forgiving? I received several messages from Jenna over the next week, apologizing again and asking for another chance. Each time, I found myself staring at my phone, unsure how to respond. Part of me was curious about the real Jenna, wondering if we could salvage some kind of connection. But the larger part knew that the trust was irreparably broken. In the end, I decided to be honest. I wrote her a message explaining how her deception had affected me and why I couldn't continue any kind of relationship. It was hard to send, but I knew it was the right thing to do. What started as an innocent attempt at online dating quickly spiraled into a nightmare that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about trust and privacy in the digital age. It was a Friday night, and I was scrolling through Tinder, half bored and half hopeful. That's when I came across Jake's profile. Tall, dark-haired, with a charming smile and photos that showed him hiking and traveling. His bio was clever and funny, mentioning his love for dogs and bad puns. I swiped right without much thought, and to my surprise, it was an instant match. We started chatting, and Jake was everything his profile promised, witty, engaging, and seemingly genuinely interested in getting to know me. He asked about my job, my hobbies, and my dreams for the future. I found myself opening up more than I usually would with a stranger online. There was just something about him that made me feel at ease. After a few days of constant messaging, Jake suggested we meet for coffee. I was hesitant at first. I'd never actually met someone from a dating app before. But he was persistent in a sweet way, and I finally agreed to meet that weekend at a popular cafe downtown. The night before our planned date, I was a mix of nerves and excitement. I spent way too long picking out an outfit and imagining how our first meeting might go. Just as I was about to go to bed, my phone buzzed with a message from Jake. Expecting a cute goodnight text, I opened it with a smile. But the words on the screen made my blood run cold. Gone was the friendly, flirtatious tone I'd grown used to. Instead, Jake's message was cold and threatening. He claimed to know everything about me, my full name, address, workplace, even my parents' names and where they lived. He said he had access to all my social media accounts and emails. At first, I thought it must be some kind of sick joke. But as I read on, my heart began to race. Jake listed off personal details I knew I'd never shared with him. Things only my closest friends and family knew. He even mentioned a childhood nickname my grandma used to call me. The message ended with a demand: transfer $5,000 to a specified account within 24 hours, or he would release all my private information online. He threatened to contact my workplace, my family, and my friends with embarrassing details from my past. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How could this be happening? How did he get all this information? My mind raced through our conversations, trying to remember if I'd accidentally revealed too much. But I knew I'd been careful. I hadn't even told him my last name. With shaking hands, I tried to block Jake's profile, only to find dozens of new messages flooding in, each one more threatening than the last. He said the price had now gone up to $10,000 for my lack of cooperation. He sent screenshots of my private Facebook posts, emails from years ago, even photos I thought were securely stored in my cloud. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios: my boss firing me over leaked emails, my parents being harassed, my address being posted on sketchy websites. I felt violated and terrified. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face anyone. I spent hours going through all my social media accounts, changing passwords, checking privacy settings, but it felt futile. Jake seemed to always be one step ahead. I debated paying the money. Maybe it would make this all go away. But $10,000 was far more than I had, and there was no guarantee he wouldn't just demand more. Plus, a small voice in my head kept saying that giving in to blackmail never ends well. After 2 days of barely eating or sleeping, I broke down and confided in my best friend, Sarah. She was horrified and insisted we go to the police immediately. I was reluctant. I felt so stupid and embarrassed. But Sarah wouldn't take no for an answer. At the police station, I nervously recounted everything to a female officer. She was understanding but frustratingly realistic about what they could do. Without concrete evidence of a crime, their hands were somewhat tied. She advised me to report Jake to Tinder, block him on all platforms, and document everything in case his threats escalated. Following her advice, I deleted my Tinder account and blocked Jake's number. I spent hours combing through my digital life, locking down every account I could think of. I warned my family to be extra cautious online, making up a vague story about identity theft to explain my paranoia. For weeks, I lived in constant fear. Every unknown number that called, every email from a strange address sent my heart racing. I imagined Jake lurking around every corner, ready to make good on his threats. But as days turned into weeks with no further contact, I started to breathe a little easier. Maybe Jake had moved on to other targets. Or maybe he'd never actually had as much information as he claimed. The relief was tempered by a lingering sense of violation and vulnerability. Just when I thought it was all behind me, about a month after that first threatening message, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. I opened it, my heart in my throat. It was from Jake, but this time his tone was completely different. He apologized profusely, saying he'd been going through a mental health crisis and had lashed out in harmful ways. He swore he'd never actually had any of my personal information. It had all been an elaborate bluff, based on some lucky guesses and publicly available info. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. Part of me was relieved at the idea that my privacy hadn't actually been breached, but another part was furious that he put me through weeks of terror for no reason. I've slowly started dipping my toes back into the dating world, but I'm much more cautious now. I prefer to meet people through mutual friends or at events related to my hobbies. The convenience of dating apps doesn't seem worth the potential risk anymore. Sometimes I wonder about Jake. Was he really just a troubled guy who made a huge mistake, or was there more to his story? I'll probably never know for sure. But I do know that this experience changed me. It opened my eyes to the dark side of our hyper-connected world and taught me the importance of protecting myself online. As scary as it was, I'm trying to use this experience as a wake-up call. I'm more assertive now about my boundaries, both online and off, and I've become passionate about educating others on digital safety. If sharing my story can help even one person avoid a similar situation, that maybe some good can come from this nightmare after all. I'd never expected a simple swipe right to lead me down such a twisted rabbit hole. It all began on a mundane Tuesday evening when I was mindlessly scrolling through a dating app, killing time before bed. That's when I stumbled upon Vanessa's profile and everything changed. Vanessa's photos were stunning. She had long, dark hair, piercing green eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. Her bio was witty and charming, mentioning a love for hiking, indie rock, and obscure sci-fi movies. It was like the app had conjured up my perfect match. I swiped right, and to my surprise, we matched instantly. My heart raced as I crafted my first message, trying to strike the right balance between casual and clever. When she responded within minutes, I was over the moon. Our conversation flowed effortlessly. We bonded over our shared taste in music, swapped stories about our most disastrous camping trips, and debated the merits of various pizza toppings. Vanessa was funny, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. As the days passed, our chats became more frequent and personal. We'd message each other good morning and good night, share details about our days, and even started making tentative plans to meet up. I found myself constantly checking my phone, eager for her next message. After a week of non-stop texting, I suggested we move our conversation off the app. Vanessa agreed and gave me her phone number. I saved it in my contacts, adding a heart emoji next to her name like a lovesick teenager. That night, I decided to look her up on social media. I told myself it was just out of curiosity, but deep down, I was hoping to see more photos and learn more about her life. What I found, however, made my stomach drop. Vanessa's Instagram account only had a handful of posts, all from the last 2 months. The photos were gorgeous, almost too perfect. They looked like professional shots, with flawless lighting and composition. Something about them felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Still, I tried to brush off my unease. Maybe she was just really into photography or had recently cleaned up her social media presence. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. The next day, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was amiss. On a whim, I decided to do a reverse image search on one of Vanessa's photos. What I discovered left me cold. The image didn't lead to any social media profiles or personal websites. Instead, it took me to a page about AI-generated portraits. My mind reeled as I frantically searched for other photos, each one leading me to similar results. Vanessa wasn't real. The person I'd been talking to, sharing my thoughts and feelings with, was nothing more than a carefully crafted fake profile using AI-generated images. I felt sick to my stomach. How could I have been so gullible? The signs were there. The 2 perfect photos, the limited social media presence, the way she seemed to share all my interests. I'd been so caught up in the excitement of our connection that I'd ignored my instincts. Still reeling from the revelation, I decided to call the phone number Vanessa had given me. Maybe there was some explanation, or perhaps I'd uncover who was really behind the profile. My hands shook as I dialed the number. It rang several times before a gruff male voice answered. Confused, I asked for Vanessa. The man on the other end sounded irritated, saying he didn't know any Vanessa and that I must have the wrong number. When I explained the situation, the man grew even more annoyed. He told me this wasn't the first time someone had called asking for a girl he'd never heard of. Apparently, whoever was behind the fake profile had been giving out his number to multiple people. I apologized profusely and hung up, my mind spinning. Who would go to such lengths to create a fake profile? What was their endgame? I hadn't sent any money or shared any sensitive information, so it didn't seem like a typical scam. I'd opened up to this person, shared personal stories and feelings, and it had all been a lie. The connection I thought we formed was nothing but an illusion. I reported the fake profile to the dating app, but it felt like too little too late. The damage was done. My trust in online interactions was shattered, and I found myself second-guessing every digital conversation. For days after, I couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa. I reread our conversations, looking for clues I might have missed. Had there been signs that I was talking to an AI or a scammer? The chat seemed so natural, so human. It was terrifying to think that technology had advanced to the point where it could mimic genuine connections so convincingly. I became obsessed with trying to uncover the truth. I spent hours researching AI chatbots, catfishing schemes, and online scams. The more I learned, the more paranoid I became. Every profile I saw online started to look suspicious. I found myself questioning the authenticity of even my long-standing internet friendships. I became more guarded, less willing to open up. I started insisting on video calls before meeting anyone in person, and I'd do extensive online searches to verify people's identities. My friends noticed a change in me. They tried to reassure me, telling me it was just one bad experience and I shouldn't let it ruin online dating for me. But they hadn't felt the shame and betrayal I had. They hadn't spent a week pouring their heart out to someone who didn't even exist. Now, when I think back to those conversations with Vanessa, I feel a mix of emotions. There's still a twinge of embarrassment and anger, but there's also a sense of growth. I never thought a simple swipe right could lead to the most terrifying night of my life, but that's exactly what happened when I matched with Jake on Tinder. What started as a promising date quickly spiraled into a nightmare that still gives me chills. This is the story of how I unwittingly found myself face to face with a man harboring a dark and disturbing obsession. It was a quiet Sunday evening when I decided to give Tinder another shot. I'd been single for a while and figured it couldn't hurt to see who was out there. As I mindlessly swiped through profiles, one caught my eye. Jake, 28, software engineer. His photo showed a handsome guy with a warm smile and kind eyes. His bio was clever and funny, mentioning his love for hiking and craft beer. I swiped right without hesitation. We matched instantly, and Jake messaged me within minutes. Our conversation flowed easily. He was witty, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We chatted for a few days, discovering we had a lot in common. When he suggested meeting up for drinks, I eagerly agreed. We decided to meet at a trendy bar downtown on Friday night. I arrived a few minutes early and having a cozy booth in the corner. As I waited, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. When Jake walked in, my heart skipped a beat. He was even more attractive in person, tall and confident in a well-fitted shirt and jeans. He flashed me a warm smile as he slid into the booth across from me. We ordered drinks and fell into easy conversation. Jake was charming and attentive, asking thoughtful questions about my work and hobbies. I found myself relaxing, thinking how lucky I was to have such a great first date. As the night progressed, we ordered food and another round of drinks. Jake suggested we play a game of 2 truths and a lie to keep things interesting. I agreed, thinking it would be a fun way to learn more about each other. Jake went first, sharing 3 statements about himself. As I tried to guess which one was the lie, I noticed something odd about his demeanor. His eyes had taken on an intense, almost feverish gleam. I brushed it off as excitement from the game and took my turn. When it was Jake's turn again, things took a strange turn. His statements became increasingly personal and bizarre. He mentioned having a collection of over 500 pairs of women's shoes, never wearing the same socks twice, and having a special room in his house dedicated to feet. I laughed uncomfortably at assuming he was joking, but Jake's expression remained deadly serious. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper as he asked me what size shoe I wore. A chill ran down my spine as I realized he wasn't kidding about his shoe collection. Trying to lighten the mood, I changed the subject, asking about his job in software engineering, but Jake kept steering the conversation back to feet. He asked about my favorite nail polish colors, if I got regular pedicures, and whether I liked open-toed shoes. At this point, alarm bells were ringing in my head. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. As I splashed water on my face, I debated whether to leave, but I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he just had an unusual hobby. When I returned to the table, things escalated quickly. Jake had removed his shoes and was attempting to rub his foot against mine of the table. I jerked my legs away, telling him firmly to stop. He apologized, but the glint in his eyes made me uneasy. That's when he asked if he could take a photo of my feet. I refused, my heart racing. He pleaded, saying it was for his personal collection. Again, I said no. To my horror, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small digital camera. He'd come prepared, expecting to photograph my feet. Panic set in as I realized the full extent of Jake's obsession. I stood up abruptly, announcing I had to leave. As I turned to go, Jake grabbed my ankle, trying to pull off my shoe. I yanked my foot away, nearly losing my balance. Without looking back, I rushed out of the bar, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my car keys. Once inside my car, I locked the doors and took a few deep breaths. My mind was reeling, trying to process what had just happened. How had a seemingly normal date turned into this nightmare? I drove home in a daze, constantly checking my rearview mirror to make sure Jake wasn't following me. When I finally reached my apartment, I double-checked all locks before collapsing on the couch. The next morning, I woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream. But the memory of Jake's intense stare as he talked about his shoe collection was all too real. I immediately blocked him on Tinder and all social media platforms. For weeks afterward, I felt on edge. I found myself avoiding open-toed shoes, paranoid that someone might be staring at my feet. The incident had shaken my trust not just in dating apps, but in my own judgment. As time passed, I started to analyze the red flags I'd missed. There was the time Jake had complimented my dainty feet in one of my profile photos. I thought it was an odd compliment but hadn't dwelled on it. He'd also suggested we get pedicures for our second date, which I laughed off. Now, these memories took on a sinister tone. I couldn't shake the feeling of violation, the realization that I had been targeted for this man's bizarre fetish. It took time, but gradually I started to regain my confidence. I'd implemented new safety measures for future dates, always meeting in public, telling friends where I was going, and trusting my instincts if something felt off. Alright, here's a wild ride I never thought I'd experience. It all started on a boring Tuesday night when I decided to download this new dating app everyone was talking about. Little did I know this decision would lead to one of the creepiest encounters of my life. So there I was swiping away on my phone, feeling a mix of hope and skepticism. That's when I came across Mark's profile. Tall, dark hair, nice smile. He seemed like the total package. His bio was witty, mentioning his love for dogs and bad puns. I thought, why not? And swiped right. We matched almost instantly, and soon we were chatting up a storm. Mark was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about everything from our favorite movies to our dream vacations. I found myself constantly checking my phone, eager to see his latest message. After a few days of nonstop texting, Mark suggested we move our conversation to a different platform. He said it would be easier to share pictures and maybe even have a video call. I was hesitant at first, but he'd been so nice that I figured it couldn't hurt. Once we switched platforms, our chats became even more frequent. We'd send each other silly selfies throughout the day. Nothing inappropriate, just goofy faces or pictures of our lunch. It felt like we were really connecting. About a week into our chats, Mark asked if I could send him a nice picture of myself. He said he wanted to see me all dressed up. I didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, we'd been talking for a while, and it seemed like an innocent request. I spent that evening getting ready, doing my hair and makeup, picking out a cute outfit. I wanted to look my best for the picture. After taking about a dozen selfies, I finally chose one I liked. It was just me smiling at the camera, wearing a pretty blouse. Nothing revealing or suggestive, just a nice portrait. I sent it to Mark, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He responded quickly, showering me with compliments. He said I looked beautiful, stunning, gorgeous, all the words a girl wants to hear. I was on cloud 9. But then things took a turn for the weird. Mark went quiet for a couple of hours, which was unusual for him. When he finally messaged me again, he said he had a surprise for me. My heart started racing. What could it be? When the image loaded, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It was my face, the one from the picture I'd just sent, but it wasn't my body. Mark had somehow edited my face onto an inappropriate image of someone else's body. The pose was provocative, the clothing, or lack thereof, was not something I'd ever wear. I stared at my screen in disbelief. How could he do this? Why would he do this? I felt violated, angry, and scared all at once. This person I thought I was getting to know had just completely betrayed my trust. With shaking hands, I typed out a message demanding he delete the image immediately. Mark's response chilled me to the bone. He said he'd already saved it and threatened to share it online if I didn't send him more pictures, real ones this time. Panic set in. I didn't know what to do. Should I give in to his demands? Should I call someone for help? My mind was racing, trying to figure out the best course of action. In the end, I decided to block Mark on every platform we connected on. I changed my usernames, made all my social media profiles private, and deleted the dating app altogether. But the damage was already done. For weeks after, I lived in constant fear. Every notification on my phone made me jump. I was terrified that Mark had somehow found me on other social media platforms, or worse, that he made good on his threat and shared the edited image. I couldn't focus at work or school. My friends noticed something was off, but I was too embarrassed to tell them what had happened. I felt stupid for trusting someone I'd never even met in person. Sleep became a luxury. Every night I'd lie awake, replaying our conversations in my head, wondering if I'd missed any red flags. Should I have known better? Was there something I could have done differently? The stress started to affect my physical health. I lost weight, my hair started falling out, and I developed dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. I was a mess, all because of some guy I'd met on a dating app. After about a month of living in constant fear, I finally broke down and told my best friend what had happened. She was incredibly supportive and helped me realize that this wasn't my fault. Mark was the one who chose to violate my trust and respect. He was the one who should be ashamed, not me. With my friend's encouragement, I started to take steps to regain control of my life. I researched online safety and learned about image-based abuse. I found support groups for people who'd been through similar experiences. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. It's been several months since the incident with Mark. I'd be lying if I said I was completely over it, but I'm doing much better now. I'm more cautious about online interactions, but I haven't let this experience stop me from living my life. So that's my story, a cautionary tale from the world of online dating. It wasn't the love story I was hoping for when I downloaded that app, but it taught me a lot about myself and the world we live in. And who knows, maybe sharing this will help someone else avoid a similar situation. It was just another boring Friday night when I decided to give Hinge a shot. You know, that dating app everyone's been raving about. Little did I know I was about to step into a nightmare that would haunt me for months. So I'm swiping through profiles, half watching some random Netflix show, when this guy pops up. Let's call him Jake. Tall, dark hair, killer smile, the whole package. His bio was pretty funny too. Something about loving dogs and dad jokes. I figured why not and swiped right. We matched instantly, which was a nice ego boost. Jake messaged me first, asking about my favorite type of music. Simple enough, right? We got to chatting, and man, this guy was smooth. He seemed genuinely interested in my life, asking about my job, my hobbies, even remembering little details I'd mentioned days ago. After a week of non-stop texting, Jake suggested we meet up for coffee. I was hesitant at first. We'd only been talking online. But he'd been so nice, and I figured a public place would be safe enough. We agreed to meet at this cute little cafe downtown on Saturday afternoon. Saturday rolls around, and I'm a bundle of nerves. I spent way too long picking out an outfit, settling on jeans and a nice top. Nothing too fancy, but I wanted to look good, you know. I get to the cafe a few minutes early, grab a table, and wait. And wait, and wait some more. 15 minutes pass, then 30. I'm starting to feel like an idiot sitting there alone when my phone buzzes. It's Jake apologizing profusely. He says his car broke down and he's waiting for a tow truck. He sounds genuinely upset and asks if we can reschedule. Of course I say yes. Car trouble happens, right? We set up another date for the following weekend, this time at a local park. Jake suggests a picnic, which sounds super romantic. The week flies by and soon it's picnic day. I pack some sandwiches, fruit, and cookies. Jake said he'd bring drinks and a blanket. I arrive at the park and there he is, waving from a shady spot under a big oak tree. My first thought, wow, his pictures didn't do him justice. Jake was even more handsome in person. We spread out the blanket, lay out the food, and start talking. It's a bit awkward at first, but soon we're chatting like old friends. Everything's going great until Jake mentions he forgot the drinks in his car. He asks if I mind watching our stuff while he runs to get them. I say sure, no problem. He jogs off towards the parking lot, and I lean back, soaking up the sun and feeling pretty good about how the day's going. 10 minutes pass, then 20. I'm starting to get a weird feeling in my gut. I try texting Jake, but there's no response. I wait a bit longer and decide to pack up and head to the parking lot myself. That's when things get really freaky. Jake's nowhere to be seen. I walk around the entire lot, but his car isn't there. I try calling him, but it goes straight to voicemail. My heart's racing now, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I head back to our picnic spot, thinking maybe we just missed each other. But when I get there, my blood runs cold. All of our stuff is gone. The blanket, the food, even my purse with my wallet and keys inside. Everything's vanished. Panic sets in. I'm stranded in the park with no money, no way to get home, and no idea what just happened. I borrow a phone from a kind stranger and call my roommate to come get me. The whole ride home, I'm shaking trying to process what just went down. Back at our apartment, my roommate helps me call the police and my bank to report everything stolen. That's when we discover something even more disturbing. While I was waiting in the park, someone had used my credit card to make a bunch of online purchases. Thousands of dollars worth of stuff, all shipped to some address I didn't recognize. The next few weeks are a blur of police reports, identity theft claims, and changing every password I've ever had. I'm jumpy, paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder. I can't sleep, can't eat, can't focus on anything. But it doesn't end there. About a month after the park incident, I start getting strange messages on social media. It's Jake using a different name and profile picture. He's saying how much fun our date was, how he can't wait to see me again. When I block him, he pops up on another platform. It's like he's everywhere. The messages get creepier and creepier. He starts mentioning things about my daily routine. What time I leave for work, where I get coffee, even when I wore it to the gym last Tuesday. I'm freaking out, convinced he's following me. I go to the police again, but they say there's not much they can do without more evidence. I feel helpless, scared in my own home. My roommate suggests I stay with my parents for a while, just to be safe. So that's what I do. I take a leave of absence from work, pack a bag, and head to my childhood home. It's a relief at first, being away from the city and surrounded by family. But even there, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. One night, about 2 weeks into my stay, I wake up to a noise outside my window. I peek through the curtains and swear I see a figure standing in the shadows of our backyard. I blink, and it's gone. Was it real, or just my imagination playing tricks on me? The next morning, there's a single rose on our front porch. No explanation. Just a rose. My parents call the police, but by the time they arrive, the rose is gone. The officer looks at me like I'm losing it, and honestly, I'm starting to wonder if I am. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. The messages have stopped, and there haven't been any more mysterious appearances. But the damage is done. I jump at every unexpected noise, triple check every lock, and never go anywhere alone. I've deleted all my dating apps, changed my phone number, even dyed my hair. Anything to feel safe again. My friends tell me I should try to move on, that Jake's probably long gone. But how can I be sure? So here I am months later, still looking over my shoulder. Still wondering if today's the day Jake will show up again. Still trying to piece together how a simple coffee date turned into this living nightmare. I don't know if I'll ever feel completely safe again. All I know is that one swipe right changed my life forever, and not in the way I'd hoped. Never imagined a simple swipe right on Tinder would lead to the most terrifying experience of my life. It was a regular Tuesday evening my match with Adam. His profile seemed normal, a mix of outdoor shots and a few selfies with a friendly smile. We started chatting, and he came across as charming and funny. After a week of messaging, I agreed to meet him for coffee. The moment I saw Adam in person, something felt off. He was taller than his profile suggested, with piercing eyes that never seemed to blink. As we sat down, he immediately launched into personal questions about my family, work, and where I lived. I tried to keep things light, but he kept steering the conversation back to me. His leg bounced constantly under the table, and he leaned in way too close when speaking. I made an excuse to leave after just 30 minutes, claiming I had a work emergency. Adam seemed disappointed but understanding. As I walked away, I felt relieved it was over. Little did I know, it was just the beginning. The next day, I spotted Adam outside my office building. He waved enthusiastically and jogged over, claiming he was just in the area. I politely chatted for a minute before hurrying inside, my heart racing. It could have been a coincidence, I told myself, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Over the next week, Adam seemed to pop up everywhere. I'd see him at my local coffee shop, the grocery store, even driving past my apartment. Each time, he'd act surprised to run into me and try to strike up a conversation. I started varying my routines, taking different routes home, but somehow he always found me. I blocked Adam's number and social media accounts, hoping he'd get the message. Instead, he created new profiles to message me. At first, they were friendly, asking why I blocked him. When I didn't respond, the messages turned angry and threatening. He said we were meant to be together and I was making a huge mistake. Things escalated when a huge bouquet arrived at my workplace. The card simply said, "For my soulmate," with no name, but I knew it was from Adam. My coworkers thought it was romantic, but I felt sick to my stomach. How did he know where I worked? What else did he know about me? I confided in my best friend Sarah, who urged me to go to the police. But without any explicit threats, they said there wasn't much they could do. They suggested I document everything and call if Adam ever showed up at my home. That night came sooner than I expected. Around 11 p.m., I heard a knock at my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw Adam standing there with another bouquet. My hands shook as I called the police. Adam kept knocking and calling my name, begging me to talk to him. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, he finally left. The police arrived shortly after, but Adam was long gone. I barely slept that night, jumping at every little sound. The next day, I told my older brother Sam what was happening. He was furious and wanted to track Adam down himself. I begged him not to, afraid it would only make things worse. For the next few days, I was constantly on edge. I'd check over my shoulder everywhere I went, terrified of seeing Adam's face. I considered moving, changing my job, anything to get away from him. But a stubborn part of me refused to let him disrupt my entire life. About a week after the apartment incident, I was walking in my car after work. The parking lot was mostly empty, and the sun was setting. Suddenly, I felt a hand grab my arm. I spun around to see Adam, his eyes wild and desperate. "Please just hear me out," he pleaded, his grip tightening. "We're perfect for each other, I know it. You're just confused." I tried to pull away, but Adam was stronger than he looked. Panic rose in my throat as I realized how isolated we were. Just as I was about to scream, I heard a shout from across the lot. "Hey, get your hands off her." It was Sam, running towards us at full speed. I'd never been so relieved to see my brother in my life. Adam let go of me and turned to face Sam, his fists clenched. "This doesn't concern you," Adam snarled. "Stay out of it." Sam didn't slow down. He reached us in seconds and shoved Adam hard, sending him stumbling backward. Adam recovered quickly and swung at Sam, but my brother easily dodged it. Sam, with years of wrestling, had made him quick and strong. What happened next was a blur. Sam tackled Adam to the ground, pinning him there with his knee. Adam struggled and cursed, but he was no match for my brother. A small crowd had gathered, and someone called the police. By the time the cops arrived, Adam had a bloody nose and was wheezing from Sam's weight on his chest. They handcuffed him and took statements from everyone. With multiple witnesses to Adam grabbing me, plus my documented history of his harassment, they finally had enough to arrest him. I got a restraining order against Adam the next day. He was charged with stalking and assault, eventually pleading guilty to avoid a trial. He was sentenced to probation and mandatory counseling, plus ordered to stay away from me. For months after, I still felt jumpy and paranoid. I'd wake up in cold sweats, dreaming of Adam breaking into my apartment. I went to therapy, which helped me process the trauma and anxiety. Slowly, I started to feel safe again.
Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.